Many people think that Anselm is being somewhat heavy-handed with how he uses this contradiction method in the argumentation. So suffice it to say, I think the ontological argument hasn't enjoyed the same level of success in convincing other people as the previous aforementioned arguments, cosmological and teleological, but some very famous philosophers who were theists have advanced a version of this argument. So the article also mentions what's called reformed epistemology. And this goes back to our section on epistemology. So Alvin Plantinga is a contemporary philosopher of religion. He's very well known. I've actually met him a few times. He is a very nice man, a very well known philosopher at, he was at Notre Dame forever. Very good school. And he gave this argument for God as being properly basic. And I'll explain what he means by that. We have to look at our basic beliefs and what we mean by the proposition God exists. Okay. So one way to focus on philosophy of religion is to focus on the de facto question that we started with whether or not the proposition is true that God exists. That seems to be the obvious way that we start philosophy of religion. And then from that, we could produce metaphysical arguments for God's existence in response to that question, which we just saw, the cosmological, the teleological, and the ontological. But these have obviously not met with widespread success. Many philosophers have rejected these arguments, even, again, theists, as not being successful. So instead, what Plantinga and others try to do is shift the focus to a different kind of question, whether or not belief in the proposition or in God is rational. Oops. So from that, the production of epistemological arguments for rational, justified, and warranted belief in God, even despite a lack of evidence, are a response to this. So this is going to be where we're going to see the arguments go from now. Instead of giving us arguments for God's existence, instead we're talking about whether belief in God is rational and justified. And that's what Plantinga and others think should be the proper approach to God's existence. So here's Plantinga. This is an older photo. I met him about, what was that, 11 or 12 years ago. He was he's an actual friend of my former advisor. So just a quick aside, but well-known philosopher of religion. I think he's still alive. I haven't actually checked, but he's got to be pretty old now. Yeah, 1932. Yeah, he's made a lot of significant contributions to philosophy of religion, epistemology, metaphysics, and Christian apologetics. So he is Christian. And he developed this reformed epistemology, which, as I said, attempts to show the rationality of theistic belief without appeal to evidence. So we'll see that in other arguments for God's existence that don't try to rely on evidence, but rather belief in God. Okay, so remember, we talked about epistemology. And so the claim is that the traditional rejection of theistic belief as irrational, that people shouldn't believe in God, rests on two assumptions. One view that we've talked about called evidentialism, which is the view that beliefs require evidence, right? So if I'm going to believe in a flying spaghetti monster, I need some evidence for a flying spaghetti monster. But there's also this view called foundationalism, which we also briefly talked about with Descartes. We hinted at. So according to foundationalism, while some beliefs are justified by resting on the support of other justified beliefs, other, what we would call basic beliefs, are just justified in and of themselves in certain circumstances and conditions. Both aim to avoid an infinite regress of justification being required by identifying appropriate stopping or starting points, either evidence or basic belief. So you already know how Descartes does this, right? the first starting point is if I think I exist. And that is, in many respects, a basic belief. You don't need evidence, right? Descartes thinks that we use reason to talk about that foundation for knowledge. So similarly, Plantinga is going to talk about maybe another basic belief, and you guessed it, it's about God. So beliefs about God are either arrived at by inference or argument, or two, in a more immediate way, in which case they are not accepted on the evidential basis of other propositions. So the cosmological, teleological, and ontological arguments, as the name implies, try to arrive at God's existence by trying to show us to accept a conclusion based on some evidence or some reasons. But Plantinga wants to say we don't even need to be in that game. Belief in God is just properly basic. It's more of an immediate arrival at something that we can know without any need for evidence. Okay, so as I said, what Plantinga and others who accept this approach, what they mean by proper basicality is immediate non-inferential beliefs. Those are the kind of beliefs that are called basic. If they're also self-justifying, which would be determined by some specified criteria, then we call them properly basic beliefs. So here's an example. I ate a Nutri-Grain bar for breakfast this morning, okay? This counts as a properly basic belief if it meets Plantinga's criteria for justification. That is, it was produced by properly functioning cognitive faculties like my eyes and my brain.